Today we're taking a look at our Nikon F to Sony E-mount ND Throttle lens adapter. This is a lens adapter that allows you to adapt vintage and more modern Nikon F and G SLR and DSLR lenses to your Sony E-mount mirrorless camera. But this adapter also has a built-in variable neutral density filter. You actually turn this silver toothed ring in the middle of the adapter, and it actually adjusts the variable neutral density filter from 2 to 8 stops of ND filtration. And this is an especially useful tool if you are adapting Nikon F lenses to your Sony E-mount camera for filmmaking, because having that built-in ND filtration is essential for cinema production. If you've got your aperture wide open, you're shooting a shallow depth of field shot, you could put a VND filter on the front of your lens, or you could use the built-in rear VND filtration of our ND Throttle adapter and just crank in exactly how much you need as you shoot. It's a really nice way to have ND filtration built directly into your lens adapter, especially if you're adapting multiple Nikon F lenses to your Sony E camera, rather than having different VND filters for every lens, or swapping a single VND filter onto different lenses depending on what lens you're using. Instead of that, you've got the VND filtration built right into the adapter, and with just a slight adjustment, you can go from 2 to 8 stops of ND filtration. It's also really nice for protecting your sensor. If you have the adapter mounted on, look, the VND filter is protecting your sensor from dust. So as you're swapping different Nikon F lenses onto the front on location, that VND filter is protecting your sensor. Now you might ask, how do lens adapters work? How am I able to adapt a lens like this Nikon F to my mirrorless Sony E-mount camera? And it all comes down to focal flange distance. Basically, these lenses were made for SLR style cameras. That is a camera with a mirror in it that flaps up and down. And so they required a lot of space between where the lens mounted and where the sensor or film plane was. These lenses were designed to focus to infinity with the sensor about this far back from the lens. So if we tried to adapt this to a mirrorless camera, which has a much shorter focal flange distance, if we mounted it right on the front, if we were able to do that, the lens would not be able to focus to infinity. It would just be completely out of focus. We need that extra space between an SLR lens like a Nikon F lens and a mirrorless camera for the lens to focus to infinity. And because we need that extra space, we have room for a lens adapter. And lens adapters can be incredibly simple. They can just simply be a metal tube, but in the case of our ND Throttle adapter, we've built in the extra VND filter function. Here's how to mount a Nikon F lens on the ND Throttle adapter. You're just going to line up the mounting dot on the lens with the mounting dot on the adapter, press the lens into the adapter, and then rotate it to lock it into place. And then if you need to remove the lens, there's this little silver lever here. You're simply going to pull that lever away from the lens. That unlocks the locking pin on the adapter. Then you can rotate the lens to remove it from the adapter. And then to mount the lens and adapter on a Sony E-mount camera, you're just going to line up the mounting dots, press the adapter into the camera. It's just like mounting a normal Sony E-mount lens, and rotate it to lock it into place. And there we go. Now we've got this vintage Nikon F lens mounted to our Sony E-mount mirrorless camera, and we have our VND filter built right in. We can go minimum, which is 2 stops of ND filtration, all the way to max, which is 8 stops of ND filtration. Now this is a fully manual adapter. It has no electronic communication pins, so you won't be able to electronically control the focus or aperture of your adapted Nikon F lens. You will have to adjust the focus of the Nikon F lens manually, and you will have to adjust the aperture manually as well. And if you have a more modern Nikon F lens that doesn't have a manual aperture control wheel like this one does, we've actually built a aperture control wheel into the adapter itself. You can see this ring here with these circles. As we turn this ring, we're actually adjusting the aperture of the lens without having to use any sort of aperture control. So if you've got a more modern Nikon F mount lens, a Nikon G lens, most of those lenses will not have manual aperture control, but you can manually control the aperture with this ring. Our ND Throttle adapter is great for filmmakers who want to have that VND filtration built right into their adapter. Let's say you're shooting a 24 frames a second video. Let's say you've got your shutter speed set at 1/50th of a second to get that nice cinematic frame rate. But now let's say you want to shoot wide open at f2.8, and then let's say it's super bright out. Well, the only way that you're going to be able to cut that light and make that footage look good is with an ND filter. And in this case, you've got the VND filter built right into the adapter. So you're just going to crank that VND filtration in, cut the light coming through the lens for a correct exposure. Now, if you're a photographer, a variable neutral density filter can also be useful. Let's say you're shooting a long exposure photo. Having that extra ND filtration to bring into your shot allows you to shoot a much longer exposure in bright conditions to create beautiful long exposure photos. Now, one quick note, the ND Throttle adapter does have a built-in VND filter that starts at 2 stops of ND filtration, which means you will always be limited to that 2 stops. There is no way to remove the VND filter from this adapter, so just keep that in mind if you're going to purchase it. Remember, you're always going to be losing 2 stops of light when you're using the ND Throttle. And one of the ways you can deal with this if you're adapting Nikon F lenses is just get a normal Nikon F to Sony E adapter that doesn't have an ND filter. And then if you go into a dark location, just swap out the standard adapter with the ND Throttle adapter so you're not losing those 2 stops of light. Okay, that was a quick look at our Nikon F to Sony E ND Throttle adapter. If you have any questions about this adapter, comment below. I'd love to help you out. Plus, click the links in the description below to get your Nikon F to Sony E ND Throttle today. And also check out the links to check out our entire line of ND Throttle adapters for Sony E-mount cameras and all sorts of other lens mounts and camera mounts. Plus, click right here to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more videos just like this one. I'm Sean with Fotodiox.com, and thanks for watching.